We need to deal with the root of this evil rather than the fruit of this evil. And we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Your vote isn't just affecting you. Your kids' kids are coming. They are going to have to deal with what we choose today.
Start praying to God for wisdom, praying to God for ways that people can start to open their eyes to really the truth that's taking place around them, because this is such a critical moment in history.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew.
I'm Sasha Vols.
And today, we have a very special guest with us. He's best known for his work as the publisher of the Economic Collapse blog. He also has a brand new book that you've got to check out. It changed my life, and it's called The Rapture Verdict. And he's also the author of the books The Beginning of the End and Get Prepared Now, Why a Great Crisis is Coming and How You Can Survive It. He's the graduate of University of Florida Law School and worked as an attorney in the heart of Washington, D.C. for a number of years. And most recently, he hosts a brand new show on the PTL television network called The Watch. Please give a warm welcome to our guest and our friend, Michael Snyder. Michael, it's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And my goodness, there is so much happening in the world right now, and especially in the political arena. We've been talking about, and we sincerely believe that this is the most important election since the Civil War. We could literally be on the brink of losing the Republic, losing America, and we'd simply be moving into a place where we'd be America in name only, rather than America of what the forefathers stood for. And we were talking in the green room beforehand that nobody can save America. No one person can save America. But we feel that Hillary Clinton may just push America over the ledge, while Donald Trump won't save America, but he might be moving us a few feet back from that ledge. And one of the purposes of this show is to simply tell the truth. And if you have the truth and you have good, sound, biblical wisdom of what's really happening, you can make better, educated decisions in the future and even in the elections in November. So we're going to go straight for the jugular here, Michael. You know a lot about this. You've studied the history of the Clintons, of Bill and Hillary Clinton, and some of the scandals that they've been a part of. Can you explain to us some of their history today and why it might be important for us to know?
Yeah, Zach. Well, actually, to do a full explanation of what the Clintons have done, you got to go back for decades, because most politicians have skeletons in the closet.
Sure.
Well, they've got a whole subdivision of houses of closetfuls of skeletons. I mean, you go all the way back to the 1980s, and if you just Google Mena, Arkansas, you'll find all kinds of things out about the Clintons. But there's been scandal after scandal for decades. But a couple we can mention quickly is, they say Donald Trump doesn't have the temperament to be president, right?
Yes.
Well, when you're talking about temperament, it's really Hillary Clinton that doesn't have the temperament to be president. In fact, she's got a temper that is legendary. And this actually comes from eyewitnesses, Secret Service agents that actually served under the Clintons in the White House that protected Hillary Clinton have written books. And they say that if you were assigned to Hillary Clinton, it was actually a form of punishment to be assigned to Hillary Clinton's security detail, because she would regularly cuss out and berate Secret Service agents or staffers, anyone around her. And sometimes she would actually get physically violent. In fact, in one recent book that came out, Crisis of Character, a Secret Service agent, this was someone who was an eyewitness, said that she actually physically got so upset with Bill Clinton one time and physically assaulted him, gave him a full-on black eye. This is the president of the United States at the time, a full-on black eye. But they just kind of went on as if, nothing happened, and they kind of put makeup over it. But this is the kind of temperament that Hillary Clinton has, which the American people need to understand. Now,
Yeah, the media doesn't report on any of this thing. You know, it's just so biased today, and that's why we want to be one of your homes for alternative news. That yes, you know, Donald Trump is not a perfect individual, but if you just simply listen to the news on the candidates, you would have no idea truly the heart of each of the candidates. You know, because it's a biased it's biased media today.
Yeah. And then you look at Hillary Clinton's husband, Bill Clinton. You would think after the whole Monica Lewinsky thing that he would be on his best behavior, right?
Sure.
Because he's had this series of affairs of basically cheating on his wife that goes back for decades. But then, he knew that Hillary Clinton was going to run for president in 2016. So you would think, well, Bill Clinton's going to kind of back off and behave now. But instead, and this came out actually from Secret Service agents in these books I'm talking about, Eyewitness, where they say at their home in New York, where they've got this place, when Hillary would go away, then Bill Clinton's mistress would come. And the Secret Service agents, they gave her a code name. It was called the Energizer, and they were told, don't approach her.
I've heard about that,
Yeah,
yes.
don't approach her, don't talk to her, just let her walk in. And so she would just go in and go out. And sometimes she would actually bring the Secret Service agents cookies. But the New York Post recently kind of identified her and put her in the New York Post, because what happened is the Clinton Foundation was actually funneled $2 million to a company that was partly owned by this mistress. But, and the Clinton Foundation, with all the money and the scandals there, we could get into for years. But, there's so much that we could talk about, Zach. But I know that you're interested in talking about the death of the staffer,
Yes.
which is kind of the latest. And
Yes,
if you
that's
Google
right.
Clinton body count, it goes. There's this trail of dead bodies, dozens and dozens of them, which goes all the way back to the 1980s, of people that could have testified against the Clintons, could have brought out the dirt on the Clintons, people that worked closely with them that died under very suspicious circumstances. And now this latest one, very,
Yes.
very suspicious, that is raising a lot of questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Sasha has that article.
And actually, Michael, I do have the exclusive on that. It says the mystery surrounding the murder of rising Democrat star Seth Rich took a sudden, sinister turn with claims that he was responsible for the email dump that brought down close Hillary Clinton ally Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And then Julian Assange, he made an offer that also added fuel to the flames of conspiracy theories, sweeping the internet that Democratic presidential candidate and Hillary and Bill were somehow involved with his death. And so now everybody's talking, everybody's wondering, because he was in the heart of all of this, and now he's gone.
And he was even talking, that veiled speech of Julian Assange, that veiled speech, because as we know, WikiLeaks was the source of the, putting forth those 20,000 emails, and that's kind of that veiled speech. Hey, if anybody has any information, I have a $20,000 reward for this. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, when I originally heard about this staffer being killed, it made the news in Washington, D.C. As he was walking home. He was shot in the back. He was a data analyst. That's important to remember. But when I first heard of it, my initial impression was, it's just a burglary gone bad, just a robbery, and there was a scuffle, and he got shot, and isn't that a shame?
And that's what they were saying, that it could be a robbery.
And that's what I thought at first. That was my initial impression, just seeing the headline, hearing it on the mainstream news. But then we got additional details. For one thing, they didn't take his watch. They didn't take his wallet. They didn't take any money. They didn't take anything from him. So if it was a robbery, if it was a burglary,
Exactly.
Yes.
well, why didn't they take anything from him? That's very, very curious.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, that's strange. And then Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, as you said, he came out, and it was 20,000 documents which were released. And you brought this up on our taping of the Jim Baker Show yesterday. And so he offered a $20,000 reward leading to the arrest and conviction for whoever was responsible. So why would Julian Assange be so concerned with the death of this individual? Why would he put up his own money regarding this? Well, we got another clue just here within the past few days when Julian Assange came out, and in an interview on Dutch television, he made this strange statement. Basically, they were talking about this. He said, well, our sources understand that there are risks involved. But then he didn't elaborate on that. They tried to get him to explain more, but essentially saying that this is one of the guys that leaked the documents, which, if you remember, during the Democratic National Convention, these documents came out. The head of the DNC got in all kinds of trouble, had to resign, and caused all kinds of chaos right in the midst of their convention. And it was WikiLeaks who brought these documents out. So basically, it looks like, and this guy, remember, Seth Rich, was a data analyst.
Yeah.
So he had access to the emails, to the information. So, Zach, it looks like this is very, very, very suspicious.
And that's the thing. I just don't understand it, Michael. With all these things that you've been talking about, and even just the whole email scandal, that according to our law, she should be in prison right now. I mean, and it's not like a Hillary for prison. It's just simply, hey, as the law states, the outcome of that is you should be in prison right now. And so it's like, why does the left, they don't question if she's unethical. They don't question if she's even, had criminal activity. They don't care that she's corrupt or that she's lying. They will even say this. Like, we know that. But they simply just don't care. They just don't care. How can that be?
Well, the many on the left, they know she's a monster, but they say, well, at least she's our monster. At least she's on our side.
Wow.
But this is how corrupt, and it shows what's in the hearts of the American people, that they know all these things, and yet they're willingly choosing someone like this. But the thing with Hillary Clinton, the director of the FBI essentially rewrote the law to get her off, because he admitted that she mishandled classified documents, that she was doing these things with her server. But she said, but she didn't intend to do anything wrong. And yet, similar people had done the exact same thing, or very, very similar, and the book had been thrown at them, and I covered this on my website.
Yes. I read that article from your website, actually.
Yeah. A naval officer had, he had been in Afghanistan, and he had, improperly used email, and classified documents were potentially exposed, but he didn't intend to do anything wrong, but boom, they prosecuted him hard.
Yeah.
Well, and it just comes down to, if it was any other person right now, this would be a whole different situation. She would be in prison. There would be books thrown. There would be laws enforced. But right now, we're seeing this, basically this pass to, you're free to go because we have a plan and you are our person for this job.
Yes. And if I know this, if you know this, Sasha, if Michael knows this, do you not think that the political elite know this? And yet, Sasha, you were talking to me earlier and showing me how these Republicans, these elite Republicans, are actually even switching to go to the other side.
Yeah.
They know what she's like. They know the character, and they just don't care. They're that much against Trump that they know what she stands for, but yet they're supporting her anyway. What's going on?
Yeah, in fact, the Washington Post posted this huge article, this very, very long list of top Republicans, establishment Republicans, that not only have said, we're not voting for Donald Trump, but they've actually pledged to vote for Hillary Clinton in this upcoming election just to defeat Trump. But they know all these things about Clinton in the first place, but you look at people like Sally Fletcher, who was the top advisor to Jeb Bush. And she came out, huge interview with CNN, she came out and said, not only am I not voting for Trump, I'm leaving the Republican Party because of Trump. I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And of course, she would have never done this without the blessing of the Bush family, because she's been working for them since 1988. On Papa Bush's presidential campaign. So she's basically almost part of the Bush family. So she would have never done this without the blessing of the Bushes. And there are rumblings that Jeb Bush wants to run again in 2020. But in order for that to happen, Donald Trump has to be defeated. So that's kind of explains some of the motivation there. But someone like Henry Paulson, U.S. Treasury Secretary in 2008,
so these
under the
guys,
Bush administration.
They really never were for conservative values then.
Yeah.
They were just Republicans in name only.
Exactly. The mask is coming off. We're seeing they're really Democrats under just another name.
Wow.
And just in recent days, U.S. Senator Susan Collins of Maine has come out, and she said, I can't vote for Donald Trump. Now, she's not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. She's going to vote for the Libertarian, apparently. But for a sitting U.S. Senator to refuse to vote for the nominee of your party, it's unprecedented. We've never seen this in any election in our lifetimes, really, where a sitting U.S. senator says, I'm not going to vote for the standard bearer of our party.
Like I said, there is such a divide right now, and these people that you're talking about that supposedly honored conservative values, they just had a mask on it, and it's being revealed who these people really are. Because here's the thing, it's not that we're just so pro Donald Trump. No, it's that we are anti-abortion. That's what it is. I mean, we are anti-abortion. There's only one candidate that's anti-abortion right now. We are for a stronger border that would limit radical Islamic extremists from exploiting our southern borders. We are for a strong military. There's only one candidate for that. We are for natural resources. There's only one candidate for that. So it's not that we're pro-Trump. We're pro ideas of these values. I mean, just to think, I mean, this is, I just want to scream sometimes. I just don't understand this. One of the very, very basic things of what makes a nation great is natural resources. You know, if you're developing a country, you know, first of all, I believe democracy is the best type of government and with some basic, you know, checks and balances. But you've got to have some natural resources and you've got to have a strong military. If you don't have natural resources of something to trade, there's going to be no money flow. There's going to be no, you know, jobs. There's going to be no nothing. And so one of the basic things for a country to have is natural resources like coal or salt or oil. And there is one candidate that is for the coal mines, that is for reevaluating the Keystone pipeline. And there's other candidates that are saying Obama and even Obama on steroids, Hillary Clinton, is going to continue to shut the coal mines when the success, the basic foundational success of a country is natural resources and a strong military and oil. I mean, just to think about that, these arguments of well, it'll hurt, if we do the Keystone Pipeline, you know, it's going to hurt the fish and the animals and the environment. And it just, well, do the fish and the animals and the environment in Saudi Arabia, does that not matter? It's like that the arguments.
Yeah, if you want to stand so firmly and say that this really does matter and that's the core reasons of why, because you care about the environment, you care about the animals, you care about the resources, well then why is it so obviously you think then it only matters about ours? Because now you're looking at another country, they're sacrificing their oil, they're giving up their resources, and they are ultimately
and they're making billions of dollars.
Yeah. And that's the thing. But no matter what, all of the issues that you brought up before, saying that we care about these animals and all that, does that not matter in their countries?
Yeah.
Does that not matter across the world? But does it only matter in our country?
We've entered a time of the abolition of gray, as Rabbi Jonathan Cahn says, with gray is disappearing and you're either on one side or the other. And right now there is one candidate that stands 100% for death, and there's one candidate that stands 100% for life right now. And so, I mean, even Hillary Clinton has said, starting in January, saying that I'm going to tax every single American, and a percentage of every dollar is going to go to fund abortion. She's even going to repeal the Hyde Amendment and just open up federal funds and put steroids on, or put abortion on steroids, when on the exact opposite. One's for death, one's for life. The other one has said, I am going to elect a Supreme Court justice that is pro-life. And even Mike Pence, commenting on Donald Trump, said he's going to elect Supreme Court justices that would even attempt to overturn Roe versus Wade. And the left is against this. Obama was against this.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton is against this. There is a left agenda that they are not willing to give up.
Well, and one thing I want to ask, really, because there's so many different prophecies. We've heard both sides with people saying Trump's going to be in, and then we've heard the other side of, well, Barack Obama is going to take over and he's not going to leave office. But my question to you, with all of this, we see this whole picture painted out, and we see how strongly, we've never seen a president stand out so strongly against a nominee or a candidate that's running for office. And he's going out there saying, if he's not eligible for the job, he can't handle it. If you vote for him, there's no way he's going to be able to handle this position. If he truly believes this, do you think he's going to actually want to leave office and be able to give over those keys? Do you think that would actually happen?
Well, that's a great question, Sasha, because just here recently, Barack Obama, he came out and made some public remarks. This was a public press conference. You know, the whole world's watching, and if you want to see these remarks I'm talking about, you can go to the official White House website. They've got them there, and I republished them on my website in an article that I did. But Barack Obama, he came out, and he said some unprecedented things about Donald Trump. He came out and he told the world, he said, Donald Trump, he's unfit, he's unqualified, he doesn't have the temperament, he doesn't have the knowledge, he doesn't, you know, basically that he could not handle the position. In fact, he said, hey, you know, if I would have lost the election to John McCain, I believe that John McCain could have functioned as president, could have handled the office of president. He said, if I had lost to Mitt Romney, I had full confidence that Mitt Romney could have been president, could have functioned as president. But he said, with Donald Trump, that is not the case. And so he said all these things about how Donald Trump is dangerous, how he's unfit, how he could not even function as president. Now, Barack Obama really means that. If he believes that in his heart, well, does he have, what is his duty if Donald Trump wins the election, if Donald Trump is slated to become the next president, will he hand over the reins of power peacefully and willingly to Donald Trump? Now, no one followed up, when he said these things. No one said, well, what if Donald Trump wins the election? What are you going to do? No one asked him that question. Someone needs to ask them that question because based on what he said, there's people are saying, well, what would Obama do if Trump actually wins?
That final statement from Barack Obama is, but that's not the situation here. And that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of many prominent Republicans, which unfortunately we are seeing that. Yeah. We're seeing them switch over. And then he says this, there has to come a point at which you say enough. Now, that statement just gives me chills. I mean, it really does seem as if he is foreshadowing something. There comes a point at which you say enough, as if enough is enough, we've got to do something. What is that something? It's only between Hillary and Trump. When is enough enough? What is he talking about? I know that we really do get into, whenever we talk about martial law, the conspiracies. Right. But there have been some prophetic words. And there's even been some conflicting prophetic words. Donald Trump is going to be elected president. We've covered it. We've also covered the other side of the prophecies that talk about martial law. I believe the church has to discern these things. Do you really think that he could orchestrate something to instill martial law that would keep him in the White House?
Well, under such a scenario, and right now we're just talking about a hypothetical scenario, but if Donald Trump won or looked like he was going to win, we could potentially see something, because if conditions were as they were today and where, life is just kind of, going on as normal in America, it would be very hard for Barack Obama to say, okay, Donald Trump won the election, but I'm going to try to hold on to power. But if there was some kind of major national emergency, some kind of catastrophic event, then that would give Barack Obama the potential justification to invoke some of these executive orders, presidential directives. One that I pointed people to in a recent article is Presidential Directive National Security Presidential Directive number 51, and which actually came in under the Bush administration. But presidents, ever since the Civil War, World War I, have always been understood to have emergency powers, but they've been greatly strengthened, since 9/11, during the Bush administration, and then during the Obama administration. And it's not just a single document, but you got to look at the laws, the rules, the regulations, the court decisions, the executive orders, everything together. Basically, gives, if in the event of a massive national emergency, something greater than 9/11, would give the President of the United States unprecedented power, could basically essentially become a dictator at that point and do whatever they want, potentially even, if things were bad enough, suspending elections, canceling elections, postponing elections, basically doing pretty much whatever they want, acting essentially as a dictator under the justification of a national emergency. So could we see such a thing if the elite of the establishment said, hey, Donald Trump could possibly get in, we've got to do something? Could an emergency or a crisis be created to kind of give them the justification to do something? I don't know. I'm just throwing out scenarios, but the presidential powers, emergency powers, are there.
Wow. We are living in some crazy times. And the producer just showed me that we only have a couple of minutes left. And, I just want to end with this story. And, Sasha and I, we're probably going to do a show on this in one of the shows in the next few weeks to come. Yeah. But there's been a book that's been just rocking me lately, and it's by Eric Metaxas, and it's called If You Can Keep It. And it all starts out with a story of whenever the Constitution was written over the 100-day period. At the end of the last day, as the convention was ending, Benjamin Franklin walked out of what is today Independence Hall, and he was approached by a certain Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia, and she approached him quite boldly and said, well, doctor, what's it going to be, a republic or a monarchy? And Benjamin Franklin, never short on words, shot back at her and said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. If you can keep it. And we are at the point in American history where it feels we are on the brink of possibly losing the republic. We were the first nation in the world in the world to actually be governed by the people. We the people isn't just some corny phrase, and whenever we start viewing it as just some corny phrase, the republic is lost. We were the first nation to actually be truly governed by the people, where our forefathers understood. They understood that if we leave morality, if we leave religion, that our constitution and our government crumbles. Actually, I have a quote even from John Adams, one of the founding fathers, second president of the United States, and he said this: "The foundation of a free constitution is pure virtue." Another quote: "We have no government. We have no government. We have no constitution. We have nothing in America. We don't have a republic," he's saying. "We have no government unbridled by morality and religion." Our forefathers knew whenever they were creating the Constitution that if we take away virtue, if we take away morality, if we take away religion from the people, we lose the republic. Because how in the world can you expect a people that are going to be governing themselves whenever we're born into sin, we're born into a evil nature? How can we expect the people to govern themselves? Because we first must have something governing within us, and that's the Lord. Our forefathers understood that whenever we start to depart from Jesus, when we start to depart from religion, as they called it, which was the Word of God, Jesus, that America would fail and we would lose the republic. And that is what's happening today. We're on the brink of that right now. And we need to pray that God would change our leaders, that we need to pray for our leaders regardless as well. And we need to pray for this nation because we're on the brink of losing it. Now, we also need to be praying that we don't get what we do deserve, that God would have mercy on us. Michael, do you have any closing thoughts for the day?
Yeah, I do. I believe this is the strangest political season, already the strangest campaign that many of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. I believe it's about to become a lot more chaotic, and we're going to see some very, very strange things. And what we're really seeing is the elite, the establishment, are going all out to do whatever they can to try to stop Donald Trump, whether it's giving Hillary Clinton an unprecedented amount of money. She's going to have more money for her presidential campaign than anybody in all of history. Or whether it's on their media outlets. In fact, if you go to just about any mainstream news website today, on their front page, right at the top, there's invariably going to be a negative story about Donald Trump. This happens day after day after day after day, and we're still 3 months from the election. And usually right next to it, there's going to be some type of positive story about Hillary Clinton. Sure. I mean, in the old days, we always knew that the mainstream media was kind of against conservative candidates, but now the mask is totally off. I mean, they're not even pretending anymore. And so they're really doing, or whether, as we discussed earlier, actually voting for Hillary Clinton, when members of the Republican establishment, they're doing whatever they can to try to stop Donald Trump. And I believe if those things don't work, they're going to go to even more extreme measures because we're seeing that the elite are used to staying in control, being in control of the political process in the United States, both parties. And now we've got somebody who's an outsider, Donald Trump, that they don't control, and we're seeing what lengths they're willing to go to try to stop him. Yeah.
We need to be, that's a powerful statement. And we need to be praying for this nation. We need to be praying for the safety of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Wow. Well, this has been Revelation in the News, one of your homes for alternative news. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here with Sasha and I. We'll see you next week.